Once upon a time, there was a little girl. The little girl was born different. Nobody understood what made her different. They knew what the difference was, but nobody understood it. The little girl was numb to the world because she was different. She was happy because she knew nothing else except her own little world. But her mommy and daddy thought it would be wise to get her out of her own little world and into this world. The little girl didn't want to, but they made her anyway. The little girl couldn't stop them. So the little girl was taught. At first she was happy, but there were others like her, to varying degrees, that were in the little world. Each one their own little bubble, and they were happy. But the little girl couldn't really make friends, because she couldn't get through their bubbles, and they didn't want to come out for her. So slowly but surely, they disappeared from her life as she moved on. Normal people didn't want to be friends with her because she was so different. Teachers didn't want to teach her because she was so different. But they experimented with her and they tried to teach her in the ways the normal kids were taught. The little girl tried to be happy, but it felt hard. It felt heavy. So one day, as the little girl grew up, they put her in a school full of normal kids, hoping that would help. They had a guardian, but the guardian was weak. The little girl was picked on and teased and bullied. The little girl became very sick and sad. So they tried a different place that had walls and bars, but that didn't work. She was again treated badly and tricked and teased and humiliated. So the little girl was moved to another place in a field, and she was outcast once again. So they put her in a bigger building that had lots of people that were meant to rule the world. The little girl did a bit better, but she was still used as a guinea pig in an experiment, just like always, even worse now, because the caretakers didn't know what they were doing, and treated the little girl as if she was a baby again. This made the little girl feel terrible. All the while she was paraded around as a success, as a mouthpiece. So the little girl was stuck. One day, she got out of the big building. They said she earned it. And meanwhile, she had met a man who she thought understood him, and fell into what she thought was love. So the two went together and got married after a while. Then the little girl lost her mother. Her mother got very sick and died. The little girl didn't think her mom was going to die. It confused her. But she was given her old childhood home, one of the few places she remembered feeling happiness. So the father went to the basement and the little girl lived upstairs with her husband. And the two tried to make a family, but nothing was working. The little girl was a little sad, but she figured it just took time. But then one day, the little girl came home from a trip to find her father dead. No warning, just dead. And the little girl was sad again. The little girl had to take care of everything, because that was the rule. The little girl didn't want to, and she needed the husband's help for some of the things because she didn't know how. The little girl even tried working, but they didn't want her for too long. She did her job, and now she's done. The little girl thought she had friends, but she began to see that they didn't respect her, they didn't love her, they didn't listen to her, nor did her siblings. And she began to question if her husband loved her, and she knew she couldn't love anyone, really. So the little girl decided she needed to go away. She wanted to curl up and be alone, just like she had been in the past. She remembered the happy times in her own little world, and she wanted to go back to it. But nobody would let her. They would tell her she can't do that. They would tell her, you can't just hide from the world. You have to face your problems. You have to speak up. You have to say what you want. You have to take care of things. This is your life now. But the little girl didn't want that life anymore. This life was sad. Her own little world was happy. There was no pain. There was no trauma. There was no trouble. There were no bullies. There were no liars. There was nothing except her own little place where she could hide. But she was never allowed to. Her only respite was her tears and her sleep. The little girl felt her heart sink every day. She feared what would happen if it sank all the way to the bottom. But perhaps that's because she doesn't know if the bottom will take her to her little world again or not. People would tell her that she has a wonderful life, but she didn't feel that way. A wonderful life makes you happy. I am not happy, she thought. A wonderful life makes you glad, but I'm never glad. I see my life and I see nothing but sadness. I see nothing but being forced. So the little girl sat and thought. Maybe my life isn't so wonderful, she thought. And she was probably right. Her husband thought it was a wonderful life, but he was born normal. He understood, and he could feel. The little girl could not. The little girl sat there and would always ask the husband how. He could never give an answer, and he never did. He would only say, well, how do you do it? Or, I just don't let things bother me. That wasn't an answer. That was brushing her off and making her mad. So she would ask again, how do you not let things bother you? I just don't. That is not an answer. I don't know what to tell you. The little girl just wanted one answer. How? How can she be normal? How can she be happy? But nobody could tell her. Or maybe they didn't want to. So the little girl decided that if she cannot be happy, she wouldn't be. There was no reason anyway. It seemed fake. Perhaps one day she'd find happiness again and it would be genuine again. But everything she tried never made her happy for long. It only made her sad or angry or frustrated. And all she wanted to do was curl up and never wake up. This story doesn't have an ending. The little girl is still sad and alone and hated. and she knows it. She sees the smiles lie, but she walks away. She has decided she does not want to deal with anyone. She does not want to talk to anyone. She has decided that, from now on, people are bad, and she only wants her own little world. And maybe one day, she'll go into it completely and never be sad again, because her world will be happy and she will not feel the bad things everyone says is normal